What you say and do in the first 30 seconds of a cold call will determine your level of success. And I will provide you with 5 very simple to implement tips that will completely change and improve how you open cold calls. And the first tip is to avoid triggering more guardedness on the prospect side. And I say more guardedness because it's safe to assume that when the prospect answers your call, their guard will already be at a medium level. This is because the prospects you are trying to sell to are getting sold to a lot by other salespeople. And when they answer your call, a call from someone they're not expecting and they don't know, they will already be guarded and trying to figure out if you are the next salesperson who is calling them trying to sell something. And with that, if you say something that makes you sound like a salesperson, you are going to trigger more guardedness. And that is going to drastically decrease your odds of success. And one of the best ways to avoid that is to minimize how much you look like a salesperson who is trying to sell something. And you might hear that and say, well, that makes sense, but I am a salesperson who is trying to sell something, so how do I do that? And one way to do that is to decrease how much you talk about the product or service you sell at the beginning of your cold call. Because it's very simple. What most salespeople do when they first connect with a prospect on a cold call is they say something like this: I'm with Websites Designed for You. We provide website redesign services. Are you interested in redesigning your website? This is a very common way to open cold calls, and I refer to this approach as using a product cold call opener, which is basically the salesperson introducing the company they work for and stating the product or service they sell. Which might sound like a logical thing to say at the beginning of a cold call, but the problem is that using that approach flags you as a salesperson who is trying to sell something and instantly increases the prospect's guardedness. Now, you might hear that and think, okay, well, if I'm not going to talk about my product and company, what the heck am I going to say at the beginning of a cold call? Well, the answer to that is to replace talking about your product and company with sharing your value proposition. And using that same example of a website design company, we could shift to saying something like, reason for the call is we help businesses to get more traffic to their website and convert more of that traffic to leads. Not only does this small change trigger less guardedness on the prospect side, but it also shifts you to talking more about what the prospect truly cares about. Because sharing your value proposition answers their question of what's in it for me, which is the main thing your prospect cares about. They don't care about the product you sell or all the fancy features of your product or what you do. At the end of the day, they care about what's in it for them. And your value proposition answers that question. And that not only tells them why it's worth spending a few minutes talking to you, but communicating in that way will improve your ability to grab their attention. And a really nice thing to do right after you share your value proposition is to use a sales takeaway. A sales takeaway is a quick expression of doubt regarding your product or service and whether or not the prospect fits well or needs what it is that you sell. And staying with the same example, that might look something like this. Reason for the call is we help small businesses to get more traffic to their website and convert more of that traffic to leads. But I'm not sure if that fits well with what you're doing right now or not. Now, saying something like that might sound counterproductive because we don't want to share doubt, we want to sell our product. And it's not counterproductive, it's counterintuitive. Because our goal at this point is to open and establish the cold call. And by sharing a little doubt right after our value proposition, not only does that create a little curiosity on the prospect side, but it can actually decrease their level of guardedness because expressing doubt would be the last thing a salesperson who is just trying to sell something would say to them. And one thing you can do to decrease how much you look like the next salesperson who's trying to sell something is skip the question of how are you doing today? This is because 99% of salespeople all ask this question at the very beginning of their cold call. And while it seems like a logical or nice thing to say when you first get on the phone with a prospect, the problem is that if you're talking to someone you do not know and someone you've never spoken to before, asking how they're doing is more of an empty gesture because you don't even know each other, and it makes you sound like a salesperson who's trying to manufacture rapport and be nice to the prospect and act like they care in order to get the other person to open up. And the interesting thing is that when you ask this question, you're actually achieving the exact opposite. You're asking this question to try to make the other person more warm, but what you're doing is you're making yourself look like a salesperson who's trying to sell something, triggering more guardedness. So you're going in the exact opposite direction than you think you're going. And you may hear that and think, well, it kind of makes sense, but I'm just trying to be nice, and what else am I going to say at the beginning of a cold call? Well, here's one small change you can make that will take you in a completely different direction. Instead of asking, how are you doing today? Replace that question with, have I caught you in the middle of anything? If you're trying to be nice, this question is actually more polite. Because instead of acting like you care about someone who you don't even know, you're asking a question that shows that you do care about the other person, because even though you don't know them, you know that there's a good chance they might be busy and you respect their time. And not only can that help you to instantly build a little bit of rapport with the prospect, but when they confirm that they're not in the middle of anything, you have just bought yourself a 2 to 5 minute window to work with to try to execute what you want to accomplish on this cold call. And the really neat thing about this question is that it actually allows you to communicate in a more familiar way with the prospect, in a way that a colleague would communicate with them when they're peeking their head in their office after the weekend asking, hey, are you in the middle of anything? And communicating in a more familiar way can also help you to decrease the prospect's guardedness and improve your ability to open and establish the cold call. So I hope those 5 tips give you some new ideas and changes you can make to the way that you're opening cold calls. And if you like those 5 tips, you might want to check out this other video on how to cold call. It takes you through the opening of the cold call all the way to the close and provides a full process for how to organize and manage your cold calls. That video is actually part of a full sales training program that we refer to as the Smart Sales System. And that training program has modules for everything from sales process to cold calling, cold emailing, dealing with objections, getting around gatekeepers, and more. I will actually put a link in the description to the Smart Sales System playlist of videos. And the video on cold calling is the 6th video on that playlist. If you have questions or want more information, the best place to go is salescriptor.com. Thanks for being here. Hope this was helpful, and we look forward to seeing you on the next video. Have a great day. Take care. Bye.